Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So I just want to first welcome everyone to Startup Grind Sacramento, and we actually have a co-host, Ken Ip. He's actually the Startup Grind director from Richmond, Canada, and he's going to be my co-host along with Laura. And Ken and I met Ken. Actually, I'm going to let you do your own introduction.
Yeah,
Ken.
I think we met each other a couple of years ago in the Startup Grind Global Conference in Silicon Valley, and we met at the taco truck during our chapter directors summit. It's a good party. I still remember the good old days where we can still meet in person. Missing those days, but it's good to see everyone. Well, seeing everyone here in our event. Welcome to our event. I'll give a brief introduction of Startup Grind for those that haven't heard about us before. So Startup Grind is a huge global entrepreneurship community around the world. We have over 2 million entrepreneurs in over 600 chapters around different cities around the world. Our mission is to give startups everywhere the education and opportunity to assess their need to build, grow, and scale their company. We want to connect them, educate them, and inspire them. We have our values is to believe in making friends and not contests. We believe in giving and not taking, and we believe in helping others before helping ourselves. So those are our values. And we share that across our different chapters. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that actually really makes Startup Grind unique is our values.
Yeah.
And Laura, here's I'm going to let you give you this. You can have the Startup Sac update.
Okay, so for those of you in the greater Sacramento region, my name's Laura Good, and I'm the co-founder of Startup Sac, which is a nonprofit that supports startups in the greater Sacramento region. So if you're not familiar with us, you might want to go ahead and check out our website. We have a couple things going on that you might be interested in. We have a private moderated Facebook group that is primarily founders in the Sacramento region and people who are excited about startups. So if you'd like to stay in contact with other founders, now more than ever, since we can't get together over coffee, that's a nice substitute. Then also once a week on Monday mornings, I send out the Sacramento Startup Digest, and I'm putting the links in the chat if you didn't catch on to that. But that's free to sign up for. If you go to that link, you can see the current edition, and it's a list of all the events happening in the region that might be of interest to startups. And then I just wanted to let you know about couple more things. Startup Sac has 2 events coming up. One is Startup Sac office hours next Tuesday on perfecting your startup pitch. If any of you know Sunny Mayuba, he is going to be teaching that, and he's great to watch. And then at the end of the month, we have our Startup Happy Hour, where we'll have a fireside chat with Camille Richmond, who's the co-founder of Hamama, which is a company in West Sacramento that sells these grow microgreens at home kits. So that's pretty exciting, and we hope you'll join us. And then the last thing, the city of Sacramento in December opened up a portal called Mentor Sacramento. It's part of a larger global platform called Micro Mentor, but we have our own Sacramento portal. And it's a place for entrepreneurs to connect with volunteer mentors. So if you want to check that out, either if you want to be a mentor or if you're looking for some advice, I recommend that you check out that website. And that's all I've got. Thank you, Rich, for the opportunity.
Okay, and then next, we have a little bit of housekeeping here. Well, all right, so basically in this day's meeting, all the attendees are going to be muted. If you have a question, just type it in the chat. Both Laura and Ken are going to be moderating the chat, and they'll ask any question. If they'll just raise up the questions, because when I'm presenting, I don't actually pay attention. And the second most common question we get is this is being recorded, so if you have to leave early or if you want to go back to references, it will be recorded. I have to admit that I do take a while to edit it and post it, but eventually it will get edited and the recording will be posted. And at this point, I'm going to leave it open for community. And specifically, Ken, do you want to, I think you had a few things, and then Jyoti after that, you had.
Yes, I would like to share the a P-Accelerator program that I'm running here in Richmond, but it's because it's online, so it's basically open for any startups in different locations as well. Can I share my screen, Rich?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I cannot share it now with.
Oh, man. Hold on, let me.
It's very secured, so we're all good.
Let me stop sharing. All right, now it's right.
Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, I got it. Okay, so I'll share my screen now. Okay, can everyone see it now?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to share with you the Startup Boost P-Accelerator program. I'm running the Vancouver program in Vancouver, but because it's online, so it's actually open to every startup in different location as well. The idea of the Startup Boost program is that this is a P-Accelerator program for early stage startups that are in their P-seed or seed stage or trying to raise their P-seed or seed round to prepare them for those investments. And also if you are happen to looking to get into another accelerator programs like Y Combinator or Techstars, those type of accelerator programs, we are the kind of like a P accelerator program, the step before that to prepare you for that. The main thing is that this is a 6 weeks program where every week you'll be meeting with us for 3 hours, and we have a mentorship lineup where the mentors will be helping you in terms of pitch coaching and also the mentoring section to give you advice for your startups. We're looking for startups that are having the team already and also their product ready. So so if you are at that stage where you're also looking to raise funding or going to accelerate the program in the future, feel free to apply. Its application is open now until March 22nd. We also have an info section where I will go into details in terms of what the program is next Tuesday at 5:30 to 6 p.m. PST. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Kenneth Ip. You can search for me and then we connect with me, and then I'll share with you the link to the info section or the Startup Boost program as well. Thank you for yeah. Question?
I think, Ken, I think I posted the link in the chat too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Good, Laura. All right, and then I think you have to stop sharing.
Yeah,
and
I'll stop sharing. Okay.
You can share what
yeah.
is offering.
Will you see my screen?
Yeah.
I just wanted to share the Advantage website real quick. And just as an introduction, probably Sacramento area entrepreneurs probably would know me. I'm in a lot of the network events and things of that nature. Quick background about me, 20 plus years in IBM Intel corporate career, had the opportunity to switch out and go do my passion, which is entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneurship geek. Started my first company at 22. And now when I got this opportunity, started the first startup in 2016, well, advising a few others, exited in 2017, got invited to get the Carlson Center set up, and then as the first exec director there. And once it started humming and buzzing, I got the chance to come back to startups. So now I have 3 startups that I work on. One is an IoT startup, Biconics, Folsom based. And second one is Westlife from Elk Grove, again, local startup. Both are pre-revenue, but having solid traction. And I'm here to talk about the reason I gave you that background is I'm a entrepreneurship geek almost, and all about growth. How do we get startups going? And this agency I'm going to talk about is Advantage. is an introduction. It's a new company that we started focused on growth. And the idea behind this company kind of formulated with my need here. I was looking for people locally who could help grow my startups. When I was doing it, or my startups that I'm advising, it was very hard to find. And so we built this with a methodology that I've used in multiple startups, how to grow. Because what happens most of the time, the small companies kind of go after marketing, saying, okay, let's go get paid ads going, just regular stuff that we already know. Let's put the social channels and digital channels get going with content marketing and everything else. But by the time, if they haven't really figured out the product channel fit, they might have done the product solution fit, but they haven't done the product channel fit. They don't know the sensitivity to each of the channels. They pour in a lot of money that they don't have really, they're always strapped. So this is an agency which is going to focus in that area. Basically, seed round through Series B is the domain that we'll be looking at. We start with doing a strategic assessment, like a growth audit, and that sets up the, we do big companies, but mostly in startup space, we set up the roadmap, then set up the foundation, which is more everything that we already know, digital marketing, social media marketing. We take over all the channels and start creating the messaging, get the messaging right, then start doing the sensitivity analysis for each of the channels, including lead gen. We call it demand gen because we nurture the leads. We do email marketing, and more importantly, the automation around analytics and everything else. And once that we do that within a 3-month period and bring in the internal team to learn that, then we go into a rapid experimentation phase. If you guys are familiar with lean startup, this is almost very similar, but you're doing it for, instead of product, you're doing it for marketing and for the whole company. And that kind of works very well, product and marketing overall, also following that lean startup model. And this is also experimentation based completely. You start with experimentation, start figuring out your message. And once you know where your customers are, you know how to find them, you start to scale. We do that within a 3 to 6 month horizon when we do this and set it up and work with the company. And then we want the company to take it over and run from there on. And that's our model. And that's because they need to, and we help them along the way become the stakeholders at that point in time. But since it was the need came from Sacramento, I met Rich when I first jumped out of Intel to do this thing. And, I basically, this need came from Sacramento, and we are just 6 months old here right now, have already done 6 companies and doing really well. But there is we want to work with Sacramento area companies because I'm a vested member. I'm now in the board of Sacramento, the Carlson Center that I talked about at Sac State. And I care about Sacramento. So we will work with Sacramento companies. It's extremely affordable. And that's the model we have built. We have a team of 10 people, all aspects of marketing in here. And they really do what we call as growth hacking in the Bay Area. It's available here. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Rich, to have me come in here and talk about this. This is a resource available to all of us.
All right, thanks, Jyoti. And I guess now it's time to go. I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. If I can find the button. All right, so I'm going to switch slides here. So this is sort of odd. I'm usually never the presenter, so this is the first time that I'm usually the host or the moderator. So this is the first time that I'm actually presenting. So let me bring up my slides here. Okay, you guys see my slides, Laura?
Yes, and are you going to take questions during the presentation, or do you want to hold them?
Yeah, if you see questions, if it makes sense of what I'm talking about, yeah, go ahead by all means. If it's something a little weird, maybe table it.
I'll wait till the end. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so just a little, I forgot to really introduce myself, but right now I'm the CTO of Cortico, but before that I had my own company where I build apps. And what I'm going to talk about today is basically, the fundamentals of developing an app for your startup. In today's agenda, what I'm going to talk about is basically I'm going to go over the groundwork that you need to do, specifically talk about ways you can make money from the app, the different models for developing for advertising, and I'm going to do like a 90,000 foot view of the mobile app development process. I'm going to talk about what you need to do in selecting a developer, and then I'm going to talk about the different alternatives to developing an app, and then I'm going to end up with some advice to people that want to actually get into this business. So first off, I just want to talk about the groundwork, and it all starts with the idea. And I can actually remember thinking that the idea of my very first app came when I was at the playground, and I think my daughter was 2 years old, and I remember coming back from the playground. The idea was basically a talking book. So that was the idea. And what I really recommend is, you have the idea, but the first thing you have to do after you get the idea is you have to research the idea. And specifically, and I'll just give a good example. I actually had a client that made me go through NDA hell before he wanted to talk to me about his app. So like, he wouldn't sign my NDA. He sent me his NDA. I had to actually do a wet signature and FedEx it to him before he would talk to me. And we finally got on the phone. He started talking to me about his idea, and I'm glad we were just on the phone, because I started rolling my eyes. I did a quick search on the App Store, and there was 25 apps that did exactly what he was describing. He never actually did call me after that, but I figured I'd probably save him quite a bit of money. But the thing is, you do need to research your idea, the market. If there's if there's competitors, that's fine. Before Facebook, there was MySpace. Before Google, there was Yahoo. So because there's competitors, that's not the reason not to do it. But you do need to know what's out there, and you need to understand the market when you do the research. Next thing I do is, this is a business, so you do have to do. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the right slides here. You do have to. Here it is. That's what I'm looking for. This is a business, so you actually have to, think of it. Develop a business plan. It doesn't have to be in fact, formal business plan has been kind of passé. You want to look at something like the Canvas model, but it gets you thinking in terms of other aspects of, not just developing the technology, but thinking of it as a business. And one of the other things too you have to think about is the marketing. And I will reflect on, like, one of my very first clients. We spent months developing his app. It actually, it took us a while to get it on the App Store. It goes live, and no one's downloading his app. He didn't develop a business plan. He just assumed by virtue of being on the App Store that it's going to get lots of downloads. And it's like saying I published a book and it's at Barnes & Noble, and no one knows about this great book. So you really have to develop, as part of the business plan, also developing a marketing strategy. So let me talk about different ways you could actually make money from an app. And the one way that people think about developing apps is the actual cost of the app. This is an app, I don't even know if it's on the App Store, but it was an absurd price, absurd app. I think it was called Black App, and it was like $1,000, and it was an app designed for rich people. What I want to show you next is, and this is a screenshot from of the top paid apps and the top grossing apps. So on the left-hand side, you can see, these are the top paid apps. And, Minecraft is typically at the top. But if you look at the right side, those are the top grossing apps. And if you look at them, they're all free. And what I really want people to point out is, if you put a price on your app, it's a barrier for people to download the app. So if you really want your app to be successful, it really should be free. And then the question is, if it's free, how do you make money? So I'm going to go over the different ways you can. One way is in-app purchase. So this is a screenshot from Clash of Clans, where you could buy digital goods. And I remember when Clash of Clans came out, I didn't understand how it made money. So I actually downloaded, and I had no intention of paying any money because I'm pretty cheap. But I remember ended up paying $50 so I could get 2 extra builders. And to today, I still play that game. The other way is subscription. So I'm going back to the original screenshot, and I circled the apps that are subscription-based. In fact, I'm not exactly sure if Tinder or Bumble, I think Bumble might be a subscription, but there could actually be more. I'm married, so I don't actually know if these are subscription apps. But a really effective way of generating revenue is having some sort of subscription base. And I'm guilty. I do have a subscription to HBO Max, and I do have kids, so I do have a Disney Plus subscription. Another way is advertising, and I'm going to actually go deeper into this in the next section. This is something you probably haven't thought about is licensing, doing a licensing deal. So the company I work for Cortical, we make apps for police departments and fire departments, and we license the app to those agencies. So that's something you could also think about as another way to generate revenue. All right, Ken and Laura, this is the interactive piece. So if you look at these apps, Ken or Laura, do you know what they had in common? I think Laura might know.
Let's see.
Or even Joe T, if you want to jump in, or Catherine.
Video?
No.
They have in common. They are both Android and iOS. That's my guess. I don't know.
Okay, you guys are off it. So they're
old.
No, I didn't get it.
They were websites before they became apps.
Oh, okay.
All right. So when they became an app or developed an app, it fundamentally changed the difference. In the case of Fandango, before the pandemic, when we used to go see movies, when Fandango first launched, it was just a website. So you would buy a ticket on your computer, you would print it out, and you would take ticket to the movie theater. And then when they develop an app, you buy the ticket from the app, you show them they have the barcode on the app and you scan it. Fundamentally changed the way they did business. And your revenue, almost what doubled that first year the app came out. The other interesting thing in terms of changing business process, if you look at Chase Bank. So, the feature where you could actually take a picture and deposit the money from your app has fundamentally changed the way they've done business. So I don't know if you've ever been, the last time you went to a bank, they actually had lots of tellers, but they may have, when I say tellers, they actually have lots of windows for tellers, but the most you ever see is 2 people in there. And when I talked to them, they said after the app actually, came out, the traffic into the banks actually decreased, the foot traffic into the banks decreased by like 60%. It's so much easier to deposit a check from your app. And then, if they ever form a line, if a line starts forming to the tellers, those people that sit in the back of the banks and at this desk, they're called bankers. So what they do is the banker, if they see a line forming, they'll gently sit you down, and then they'll do whatever deposit or transaction, and at the same time they'll try to maybe upsell you on a refi or credit card or something like that. So fundamentally, apps has changed the way people have done business. You can deliver a product or service. I mean, this has been phenomenal. Airbnb prior to the pandemic actually had a valuation much greater than Marriott, and Airbnb actually has no physical property. We've seen the success with Lyft and Uber. And the one on the right-hand side was Doctors on Demand. We had a client that actually wanted to do something similar with lawyers. Laura could remember that. But it's effective. I actually, when I tested it out, I met with a doctor, they had a FaceTime meeting with a doctor. He was able, it cost him like $40. She actually was able to prescribe me some allergy medicine over the phone. So being able to deliver a product or service is another way you could generate revenue. The last way is just acquiring lots of users. At the time of acquisition for WhatsApp, they had almost half a billion users, and Instagram they had 150 million users. And you can see that when they acquired it was 19 billion for WhatsApp or 1 billion for Instagram. And so if you look at them fundamentally when they were acquired, they actually had no revenue model, really no effective revenue model, and the goal was to just acquire a massive amounts of users. And if you guys know how to do that, I would love to work for you. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the different mobile ad models that are out there. And the ones that most people think about are the banner ads. And so what I'm on the right-hand side, I'll just put in some examples of mobile ad platforms. So you don't actually have to get the ads out there. You could actually just, you could maybe Google mobile ads and then find the one that you like. And then with an API, they could put your app, they could put the ads in your app. They could just serve it to you. So banner ads is what most people think about. There's usually something at the top or the bottom, a little advertisement. If you hit it, magical things happen. Another ad is called an interstitial. So these are almost like commercials. So if you're playing a game and you you defeat the dragon, rescue the princess, and then it stops. And then you may see, in this case here, it's a commercial for, I think you see this is a little dated, but it's a commercial for the Smurfs movie, and they tap it, and again, another magical things happen. There's another thing called an offer wall, and this is typically seen with games. So earlier I had shown you, Clash of Clans, and if you want to get ahead in the game, you can buy like these little gems, and for $100 you could actually buy like a lot of gems. But if you're cheap like me, some games actually have an offer wall. So maybe you don't want to spend money, but you're willing to tap and watch a commercial and then gain some, digital. In exchange, you get digital assets. And in fact, my son plays a couple games, and I won't pay for him to buy virtual assets. So he'll sit there and watch a commercial, and he'll get whatever credits or gems or coins just for watching that commercial. This is actually something that I actually like. It's a rewards model. In fact, KIP is probably the foremost. In fact, Brian Wong actually spoke at our chapter a few years ago. But basically, what they do is they'll have you can actually have you can gamify it. So for example, you can have this running app, and let's say I ran I walked a marathon, not all at once, but I walked 26 miles. At the end of that thing, I get this a pop-up that says something like, oh, congratulations, you just got a coupon for 75 cents off 75 cents off a energy bar. Like, oh, cool. So it's like you've sort of earned this, it's like you've earned this benefit. And this model tends to be a little more, people actually like it because they felt they've earned it, and it actually pays a little more than the typical banner ad. And probably the most successful is native advertising. So this is a screenshot of actually my Facebook feed here, and so basically, if you have some sort of social media feed, and then somewhere there is an ad in this place. In this case, it's Godzilla versus King Kong. I guess somewhere on my profile, it shows that I like monster movies or something. And honestly, I'm a sucker. I actually kind of like Facebook ads because they tend to deliver stuff that I actually do like, because I tend to get things like Star Wars stuff or Star Trek stuff. And if you look at the success of Facebook and social media, this is a quite effective means of advertising. So if advertising is something that you do have to you do want to do, you have to plan for it. So even if you're doing something as simple as a banner ad, you need to leave space at the top, like 58 pixels at the top for the ad or bottom. Or if you want to do like a rewards model, you just need to know that you have to figure out where the triggers are for those rewards are. So now I'm going to talk about the mobile app development process, and this is really just really at a very high level of what you do. So if I were to make it oversimplify it, I'd say there's really three phases. One is the wireframing, and the wireframing is like the sketch of it. The user interface design, that's what the app will actually look like. That's a designer will take that and take what you have a wireframe and make it look like what it's supposed to look like. And then after that's done, the coding begins. That's where the developer is actually coded. I think what you as a novice or the person that is a startup entrepreneur, the one thing you can do is develop the wireframe. It's a sketch. There's some tools that, when I first did my wireframe, I actually just used PowerPoint because I actually knew PowerPoint. You could use almost any graphics program to make it. My designer actually uses Sketch. And as of late, I actually like using Balsamiq, which has these nice tools that I can pull up. But this is something that I feel like any entrepreneur can do, is do the wireframing. And the wireframing will do a couple of things. One is it shows the flow and functionality of what your app is, and it helps you visualize the concept. It helps define your scope. And the other thing that you can do is it allows you to give feedback. So you can take your wireframe and show it to friends, or maybe more importantly, people that are potentially your customers, and get their feedback and say, is this something you would buy? No, or you know, how can we improve it? You know, and I just kind of went over that. You just need to know the phone capabilities. You know, right now, every year there's always new phone capabilities, and have the goal in mind. Like, what is it that you want to do? When we develop an app, you want to research what other apps do. So when Uber first came out, I had a lot of people that came to me and they want to be the Uber of notaries, or they want to be the Uber of electricians or chefs. Well, one thing you can do is just examine how Uber does it. You know, that's what you do when you research the app. And then I use the term storyboard because when I say wireframing, people may not get that, but if you guys say storyboard, they do get it. And then, like I said, there are some, you know, you can just Google, you know, wireframing tools, but really any graphics program, you can use any graphics program to develop a wireframe. And what I boxed out there, the user interface design and coding, that's actually something where you really need to get someone that's professional, or, you know, get someone on your team that knows how to do it. That's probably something, if you're a novice, you probably want to get someone that has some expertise in it. Speaking of which, I'm going to talk about selecting a developer. And this is actually, you know, I'm going to talk about how, if you want to do it high end, you know, things that you really need to do in selecting a developer. And actually, for my audience participation, Ken, Laura, what do you think is the most asked question I get, or used to get? You know,
Will they develop my app for equity in my company?
I get that too.
Do you have cheap versions, or you know, someone that can do it for like cheap, like you don't need to pay too much on it?
Well, the most asked question I get is, how much does an app cost? And it's like, wow, that's a big question, because it could be, you know, almost nothing to, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop an app. So because of this, you know, this is where I'm going back to the previous section. You do have to develop a wireframe, because if you just say, hey, I want to make an app, I have no idea what the app looks like. But if you have a wireframe, that gives me a pretty good idea of what the app is, and based on the wireframe, I could probably get you, you know, I could actually even give you a fixed price quote if you have a good wireframe developed. This is something that, you know, developers have to think about. So with the wireframe, we actually have to develop, like, how are we going to make that app work? So, you know, a good developer can actually go back and develop an architecture. It's basically the back end that's needed to support the app. So think about the app as, you know, if you look at Yelp, Yelp is just sort of the interface that, you know, people access it, but behind Yelp, it's really a giant database. So, you know, the developers, you know, once you look at your wireframe, they could then develop an architecture to support it. Although I have seen really amateur developers, like, you know, they work on the UI, but they really don't understand how to develop the back end. One thing you really should think about is, you know, if you feel your idea is very if you feel your idea is, you know, something that is quite valuable, and you want to talk to another developer, it's okay to ask them to sign an NDA. In fact, when I was a developer, that was the second most asked question is, do you have an NDA? So often that I actually have it on my phone, and I could just, you know, I could text them the NDA and they could sign it there. You know, so I get that question so often. It's okay, and if they don't want to send an NDA, it's probably good to skip them, because they're, you know, most developers will sign an NDA. This is probably my older slide. I used to use Windows Mobile, and I used to have Android, but really just make sure that you know, you want to be able to address both markets, Apple and Android. You know, there's some advantage. I mean, you really need, if you really want to get the most of the market, you want to do that. Android tends to be more prevalent outside of the the United States, that seems to be standard because it's cheaper. What I found personally in the United States is Apple iPhone is more prevalent. And if you don't know which one, sometimes you may want to just go with the platform that you actually have the phone in. But ideally, when you deploy your app, you have to address both Android and iPhone. The other thing too is
we've got a question. Do you recommend a mobile web app?
Yeah, that's actually, in fact, that's actually a very good alternative. So it is very expensive to develop an app, but a progressive web app or a responsive design app, design website is actually a good alternative just to get your concept out there. Because to truly to design a truly design a good mobile app can be quite expensive, and it's an experiment because you don't know if your idea will actually is something the market wants. And so having a responsive design website is a great alternative to that.
Another question, which is the easier path to the App Store, Apple or Google?
Generally, Android is very easy to, literally, I could publish something. It used to be I could publish something to Android while watching TV. Watch a couple shows, and then I actually see it's live. More recently, Android has become more difficult, but in general, Android is easier to publish to and more forgiving than Apple. So on this site here, you can actually have an app that's self-contained. In other words, it doesn't need to have talk to some sort of cloud-based database. And I think when the apps first came out, that was sort of the case where everything that the app needed was in the app itself. But shortly afterwards, they all need some sort of backend. And typically it's done on AWS or Amazon Web Services. So it's not just when you hire developers, it's not just you're gonna, unless you get a really talented full stack guy, you typically need to have a front end guy, and then you need to have a back end guy plus designers. And this is the other thing too. If you're looking at a team, design is very important. And if an app is designed poorly, you're going to get less traction. And it even gets to the extent of the icon. I actually went to this presentation by this app company. Then they did all the famous what do you call it? The apps done the Scooby-Doo apps, the Strawberry Shortcake app. The apps that actually have some sort of brand. And what they would do is before any app was launched, they would have 40 versions of the icon, and they would have they would get a group of people, what do you call it, a market study, and just have people's opinion on what the icon is. And there is a study that shows that people will download an app just based on the icon itself. And with that said, people will, if your app looks ugly, they won't use it. Think about the apps that you use, and if they are, think the apps that you've downloaded and it just was, just not attractive, human nature, you won't use it unless that app, even though it is ugly, actually does solve a problem. But design is very important. You want to look at the portfolio, and this is a screenshot of, if you're looking at a firm, this is a screenshot of my company's. So you want to take a look at the apps that they have, and download the apps, install it, look at the functionality, look at the ratings, and so portfolio of a development company is very important. This is something that I don't think a lot of people think about, is who owns the source code. So I'll give you a story. One of my very first apps, in fact, it was the one I was telling you, it was called iMotherGoose. I met this guy over sushi, and he, we had this handshake agreement to develop apps. And so I had the ideas, I funded it, and he programmed it. He learned how to program it. And, when we started getting some traction, he had basically said, well, I own the source code. And I was just livid because, you know, look, I paid him, I bought his computer, it was my idea. But since he wrote it and he technically owned the source code. And so basically that, you know, that whole, you know, the iMother Goose apps that my first app I developed, just basically I had to abandon and not use because I didn't own the source code. So if you're engaging with a developer, or if you are looking at, you know, even just hiring someone or having a founder, make sure that you know who owns the source code. And if you know, if you are, you know, this is more on the legal side, but if you are you know, you got someone, if you have a co-founder that is writing the code, make sure that the ownership of the source code is, hopefully you have an entity like an LLC or a corporation is the owner of the source code. So if you, just going back on this, if you hire a contractor, you know, and I'm not being a lawyer here, but I'm giving you a little bit of what I know. If you hire a contractor, they technically own the source code. It's just like if you hire a photographer, they technically own the copyright. They own the you know, we used to have negatives, the negatives of the photos. So you have to be very explicit, you know, when you work with a developer, who owns it. And the one exception, although you need to be clear, is if they are an employee. If they're an employee, then technically the corporation owns it. But you have to, you know, talk to a lawyer, but make sure that you know where the source code is, because if your developer claims it, then you're kind of screwed. And then, you know, there's all these other processes that comes up in the Scrum and sprints. But the reality is, whatever the process is, make sure that you're part of that process. And I've heard of horror stories where I talk to clients, they hire some offshore team, they throw them they throw them the specs and the requirements. They don't hear from them for like 3 or 4 months. They come back and they hand them, you know, an app that sort of meets the specifications, but you know, just basically wasn't it. Why I say that you need to be part of the process is that you need to always, you know, always improving, getting feedback. And so when the app goes live, you're not surprised because, you know, you've been part of the process. So if you're going to go with an outside firm, there's 2 modes. There's sort of this hourly or fixed. As a developer, I prefer to have hourly because it guarantees that, you know, it's cost materials. It guarantees that I get a profit. But if you're working with like an offshore team or something, you don't know if they're working, if it's hourly, you don't know if they're working or if they're smoking. There's some tools that you can use to do that, you know, to measure it. But you know, if you're not there to actually manage them, you know, going with a fixed price model might be the better way to do it. And I'm going to talk about fault tolerance. So this is where you know, this is why it's maybe good to go with a firm to develop your first app versus an individual or private contractor. And I'll give 2 scenarios. There was I had a client come to me and they're panicked because their developer just disappeared. He you know, he wasn't returning his calls. You know, he wasn't returning email. It just flatly disappeared, and they were under the gun to, you know, to go live with their app. It turns out in that case, that developer had a DUI and he was thrown in the county jail, so that's why I didn't see him. The second scenario is like, you know, if you do have, you know, if you're lucky enough to, you know, to have a co-founder or find someone that would actually want to program for equity or a little bit of money. What I have seen, and I've seen this happen to a couple of startups here, you know, they find somebody that's talented. He starts programming for them, and then he gets he got a job offer from Google that was like for $200K, and you know, the startup couldn't compete, and he left, and they had some code, but it wasn't quite done. This is where, you know, maybe going with a firm is good because you know. And you know, when I had Aptology, we had a situation where the developer, he had a family emergency, he had to leave, and so what we had to do, we found, you know, we put another developer to fill his place. It took a couple of days for him to get up to speed, but we were able to continue and have that, you know, we were able to continue to have that project continue and be completed on time. The other thing too that you really should think about is you need to talk about maintenance plan, because if think about it, how every year there's going to be, right now we're on iOS like 14, and so every year there's an upgrade to the operating system, and sometimes it breaks things, and so you really do have to have a maintenance plan. Sometimes there's also you really have to have a maintenance plan. You have to anticipate that at least on an annual basis that you're going to have to update your app. So talk up front with your developer about some sort of maintenance plan, and talk about warranty. If what if if there's a bug, that's discovered, what does will your developer stand behind their work? And when we had Aptology, we did actually have a 1-year guarantee. If they found a bug, we would fix it. Also check the references. It's like, if you're hiring a contractor, call the references and make sure that, and ask them, questions you should ask them is, what was communication like? Did they complete the project on time? What was the quality like? So, ask for references and call those references. And price is always, important, but, I find that a lot of times if you go with the low cost bidder, sometimes bad things happen. And if you get multiple bids, this is why having the wireframe to it, because then you could actually have apples to apples comparison. You'll see like dramatic differences between bids. And my advice is probably the lowest one is probably not good, and the highest one is probably not good either. I want to try to find someone that's sort of in the middle. So I'm going to talk about different alternatives to app development. And actually, as I was writing my slides, I actually forgot to mention it. But the earlier question was having a progressive web app or a responsive design website is actually a good alternative to having an app. It's definitely more affordable. What I'm showing here is Good Barber and AppyPie. There's actually do-it-yourself. These are do-it-yourself products, so it's low code, no code. And so you could, go there, and they're really, a lot of times they're really good with content. These no code or low code apps are really good at displaying content. So they could be a really inexpensive way to develop apps. I call this authorware. So like Flutter, React Native, Ionic, these are platforms where you can develop an app, and you could actually develop it on a platform, and it'll spit out code for iPhone and Android. So you really only have one development process. There's some issues with this, but if you're low in funds, and remember the slides I was talking about, you really need to have both iPhone and Android. This is a good way to be able to have both. Long term, it may not be great, but initially to get your MVP, it's probably a good way to start. But generally, like if you were to have generally if I was going to quote, I would give a quote for iPhone and Android, like two separate developers. And, if you're using an authorware, it might be like, instead of 2x, it's basically 1.25x. Another way is to reskin an app. So you can buy source code. And this is, we used to give these, we used to make these games for, we used to make games for speakers at Startup Grind. And so we had the game source code, and whenever I had a new speaker, I would, we'd have someone and we'd cut out their face, and we make these little games for them and publish it on Android. But, for example, if you wanted to do like an Uber type of app, let's say you wanted to do like an Uber of electricians or something, right? There's a couple places you can get, Chupa Mobile is one that comes to mind. You can go and browse through, what templates they have. So they do have like a Uber type of thing. And then you could actually hire the actual designer to, to modify it for your needs. So one way is to reskin and modify it is just go with an existing code base. And that might be, a very effective way of developing. So I'm just going to end up with some advice here. And this is just general startup advice, but solve a niche problem. And this is an app that we developed, one of my early on apps. It was an app that we developed for longshoremen. And if you don't know what a longshoreman is, they're the guys that take stuff off a ship and on the ship. And back then they literally had these books. They would log their time in these notebooks and their vacation time in these notebooks. And so the guy that came to us was a longshoreman, and what he wanted to do was he wanted to, instead of doing on these notebooks, have it on it as an app. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. And so if you really look at it, and what you want to do is just charge 99 cents, like a subscription model, and charge 99 cents a month. And if you look at longshoremen, there's 250,000 longshoremen in the United States, and to me that solves a great problem. I would rather, if I were a longshoreman, I'd rather be able to track it on an app than, keep it in a physical book. And if as a longshoreman, if they already get 10%, if he was able to get 10% of that population, that's 25,000 a month. And to advertise, to market it, it's really not that hard, because there's only there's maybe a longshoreman magazine, and there's it's very targeted marketing for that. The big thing is developing your MVP, and I have it, is your minimum viable product. So as you develop a product, and you can go in and add a bunch of features, and I've done this where I sit with customers and they start piling on the features. But there's a realization that the more features you pile on, the more expensive it gets to make, and the longer it's going to take to develop. So you have to sit down there and figure out what are the minimum features that I can go to market with that'll still be successful. So before you feature them, think about it in that terms. And then once it goes live, then you could add upon it. So there's a whole book called Nail It and Scale It, but I like to think of it this way. I had a client that they actually wanted to create a product similar to Yelp. They actually had a decent budget for a start. They actually had a couple $1 million. And they tried to go very big with that budget, and they really found that they only had success in South Florida. They died a horrible death and still owe me money. But really, what you need to think about is you can think of it in two different ways. One is you could, if they maybe just focused in South Florida, still focus their sales instead of trying to go nationally, they just focus their efforts in South Florida. And if they can get traction and show that their idea is valuable to the market, then they could expand it. Another example I can think of is Rocket Spoon. They were a YC, they were a delivery company. They're a YC darling, and they started out in Oakland, and they had they were graduated. They had $12 million, and they started out in Oakland, and they never really perfected their model. And then they had a model, their delivery service in Oakland, and it was losing money. And then what they did was they took that same model, replicated in San Diego and Seattle. And so they actually had 3 times the loss. They never perfected the model. Whereas if you look at something like Uber, they started out in San Francisco, and they had a lot of issues they had to resolve. But once they perfected the model, the regulations, how to hire, how to hire and attract both customers and drivers, then they expanded. Another example is Amazon. For people that are old enough, Amazon, when they first came out, only sold books. That's all they sold. And so they focused on one niche. And as they figured out their process and stuff, now they can buy pretty much anything on Amazon. So it could either be, try to target your attention either on a geographic scale, or if you can, or maybe just a targeted niche market before trying to go big. All right, so this is what I covered today. I talked about Groundwork, different ways to make money, different ad models, the app development process, things you need to consider when selecting a developer, and alternatives to app development. So with that, are there any other questions, or if you want to raise your hand, we can have an open discussion here.
Thanks for Rich for the sharing. Let's give him a round of applause. I think this is the challenge with doing like an online event is that you cannot really hear all the clapping. I enjoy all those clapping and I'm missing that. So, but there we go. We have a couple of questions from the Q&A. Or one more. So one quick one is from Akash. Can the slides be emailed to us?
Oh yeah, yeah. Here, let me. I'll put my. I'm going to put my email here, and then you can just. I'll put my email in the chat, and you guys can. Let me see where the chat is. I'll put my email in the chat, and you guys you can request it. Just email me.
Okay, awesome. So then, K Singh, let's see. Seems like you need legal advice more than you could read and do on your own. Which did you first hire a lawyer? Different types of lawyers are out there, like you said, for when to have ownership of source code. Did you hire an IP attorney for that work? How did you pay them, etc.? It's a long question, but it's all good.
Well, you know, there is well, I guess there's a couple ways you could do this. One is you could go to something like Quick Legal. A lot of times they have like preset documents that talk about this. So that's one way to do it. Like they have NDAs you can get. They probably have something about source code. So you could maybe just Google and find like documents. If this was a live event, there's typically a startup lawyer that I could actually introduce you to. I will put my email, and if you feel like it, I can maybe make, if you have some actual legal questions. In fact, the one of the board members of Startup SAC, his name is Jan Roos. He's happy. You can probably just meet with him or ask him a few questions, and he typically will give you. He won't like give you like, he may just give you some advice that's there's only so much you can do if it's just free advice. But he can point you in the right direction. There's a couple of people I know that can do that, and I will put my email there as well. So if you need a lawyer reference, I could just have them talk to you. I could send you their way.
And Rich, I just want to add that for a lot of it, where this comes up is in the contract that you have with the software developer, and just making sure that you specify that you own the source code in that contract.
Yeah. And actually, if any contract, you really need to have a lawyer review it. I mean, especially if you're spending, tens of thousands of dollars, you really need to have that. And see.
Okay, next one, Damon. How do you determine budget for an app based on monetization model and estimated revenue?
Well, I've been to enough startup events where, I always see this bar graph, and they'll predict millions of dollars of sales. And I think Laura and I have been in enough of those. After 3 years, they predict millions of dollars, and I never see that happen. This is where, this is where you almost have to do sort of market research, like Laura, when we used to be able to meet in person, we would have startup weekend and would talk about this. This is where you need to talk, just validating your market idea. I would do that before determining a budget. I see lots of people, they want to create something and it sounds like a great idea, but will the market buy it? And so this goes fundamentally back to, before you even do the budget, like, is this something that's worth taking to market? If you do this, if you build it, will people buy? And it's a risk, quite frankly. You don't know it, but the more research, the more data you can get up front. I think one of the more successful, they're sort of successful. Laura, what was the construction company? What was his name? They did they had the construction app, Linked.
Yeah.
So I think they're still beginning, but they had this idea, and it was for construction. And what they did is they brought it to their customers, and what amazed me was their customers were willing to. It was they were addressing such a need that the customers they showed it to were willing to actually finance them or give them their seed capital because it addressed such a big need. And so this is really more of a, marketing fundamentals, but you gotta try to validate if your market idea is is something that the market's gonna take. In fact, I think Laura, I might actually have that as an upcoming thing, is validating a market idea. That might be a good next workshop to have. And Jyoti, that might be something you can talk about too.
Okay, next one, Damon. Can you talk about the potentially creepy data which you will gain access to from users and when you can gain access to it? i.e., can you get context upon download or upon first app launch?
So on this here, I think Facebook was the worst for like being able to access, their customer data. If you saw it with the Cambridge Analytics stuff, but from an app development, it's actually Apple actually really does a lot to try to protect their users' identities. So there has to be an opt-in before you get access to the data. And then, they see that, and then Apple will actually ask you, is this necessary? So Apple has some safeguards in there. And I just see more recently, Google has increased their safeguards. And more recently, we used to have apps where the location services was actually on by default. And that way we could send out targeted push notifications. They don't allow that anymore. They have to really justify that. So to answer your questions, the
state of California has its own laws about data privacy. And so you really need to go learn what those laws are if you're going to be collecting any kind of data in your app or on the internet.
Hey, did you lose me?
Yes, we lost you for maybe 30 seconds.
I was like, what? Okay. Yeah, so what Laura said, but what I basically say, both Apple and Android are actually doing more to protect. It's actually harder to get data from the users now. And Apple and Android are actually, they're, to their benefit, it's actually, making it harder for developers to get that data.
Rich, I cannot switch on my video. It doesn't let me, but I just want to add one thing. In general, data privacy wise, both it's going to get more and more restrictive, but as a general rule of thumb, whatever data you're acquiring for the customer, you need to let them know you're acquiring this and what it's being used for and how long. And that's the terms of service is kind of becoming a requirement. You probably want to put that on your website as a first thing when you say, okay, this is the app, this is what I'm collecting, and this is how long I'll be keeping it. And PII, personally identifiable information, is absolutely under the microscope at the moment. So those are my couple 2 cents.
Good point.
Are there any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Laura.
I wanted to add something just going back a little before data, and I can't turn my video back on either, so you just have to look at my name. But someone, you were talking about validation, and a lot of successful startups that I know, they didn't go build the app. They built what I'll call, kind of an MVP or a straw man, something that from the user's point of view, it looked like the app, but from the back end, everything was being managed sort of manually or through a spreadsheet or something like that. And it gave them a chance to validate if the idea works. For example, there's a startup called something Elephant. It's a yoga. It's an app that connected yoga instructors with venues and with students. And all of the matching they did manually behind the scenes. And then they got enough traction to get funding and get the app built. So I guess what I'm saying is there's ways to validate whether or not you have product market fit before you spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars writing an app.
One of the startups I saw at 500 Startups, they were doing like work. It was like videos on how to properly do, properly. It was like work training videos on how to move equipment. And their product was basically a bunch of videos. Initially, their MVP was a bunch of videos on WordPress, a WordPress site, and it was actually ugly, but because even though it was ugly, because it addressed such a big problem, they got traction. So just to reiterate what Laura's saying, if you can, it may be, if there's another way to do it, a website might be a better alternative instead of starting to build an app. Any more questions, Ken or Laura, that we have?
I think we are good on questions, unless more popping up in the chat. The Q&A session we covered them all already.
Yeah. Is your book still available, Rich?
Yeah, I do have a book called I don't remember what it's called Developing Apps for Profit. It's on actually Amazon, but I do give out a PDF of it. So I will send a link to the PDF of it. It actually has a lot of what I was talking about in the. It has a lot of talk about what I was talking about in this presentation, although it's a bit dated. It was probably like 7 years ago that I wrote it, but I'm happy to send it out.
Okay, so maybe put your email address in the chat again, and then people can contact you if they want your app.
Yeah,
I mean your.
And I'm sharing. Are you seeing this? It's this the PowerPoint. It's got my email and my cell.
Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, that's the email.
If you just want to take a picture of that, although I'm no longer CEO anymore, so it's a little dated.
We have one more question from Justin in the Q&A. Do the app stores, Google or Apple, make download and utilization stacks easy to access for free apps?
That's an interesting question. They do have some stats, but they're better. But it's usually more about downloads. If you want better analytics, like App Annie, you could just Google it, but there's other app platforms that you can integrate into your app that'll give you better analytics. But they do come with some, but mostly it's about downloads. All right, I guess if that's it, I want to thank everybody for attending today, and Ken and Laura and Joe T, thanks for, and Catherine, it's also good to hear from you was it North Dakota? It's good to hear from you. When I saw your name, I was actually quite thrilled. So I'd like to go ahead and conclude today. Thank you for everybody for attending, and thank Ken for bringing your guys from Canada. This is our first international event here.
Yes, that's good.
And one last thing. We have the next event is April 13th. It's more about the sales process, and I just got it. It just went live today on startupgrind.com/Sacramento. So hope to see you out there as well.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay, everybody, thanks for coming today, and I'm going to go ahead and end it. And I got to go home and have dinner with my family. So guys, have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.